The far right is really making a comeback in Japan in the Japanese parliament. The far right Sanseiyato party has 15 seats in the upper house of the Japanese parliament, which means that millions upon millions of Japanese citizens voted for this party. This is a pretty big deal because it really does bespeak a rising tide of far-right Japanese nationalism in the country. This party wants to revive emperor worship. It wants to make the emperor the sole ruler over Japan again. And it also wants to revive Japanese military strength. And it also wants to make Japan's military independent of American control. So the fact that so many millions of Japanese people voted for this party to the point where they now have 15 seats in the Japanese parliament really shows that this movement is quite substantial and is very popular. And I think that this party is going to grow in popularity. If not, the mainstream right-wing party, the LDP, or the Liberal Democratic Party in Japan, is simply going to express more far-right views in order to retake the voters that the Sanseiyato party took from the LDP. Regardless of what happens, far-right politics and ideology and nationalism is going to continue to grow in Japan, and it's going to become more intense. And nationalism, militarism, these things are only going to get bigger. I've been saying this since 2014. And so here we are. I'm saying the same thing for over a decade because more and more stuff is happening that just confirms my suspicions. So let's read through this article. I read through this article last night. I thought it was pretty interesting. And it talks about the Sanseiyato party. Yeah. So, guys, if you are a Japanophile living in a Western country and you love anime and you want to, I don't know, maybe you got like one of those anime pillows on your bed and you love Pokemon and Sailor Moon or whatever, maybe, I think maybe now is your last chance to go to Japan before they really just declare war on foreigners. Because I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to all these videos on Japan on YouTube that have been coming out lately. But a lot of Japanese people hate Western tourists, especially American tourists, because let's be real here. A lot of Americans, y'all don't know how to behave right in different countries. You see, we'll talk more about this, but American tourists a lot of them don't know how to act right. And they don't respect traditions because America doesn't have really any traditions except for free refills. And that may be dying. Who knows? But Americans don't really have traditional boundaries. They don't really have moral lines that you're not supposed to cross. You're allowed to cross any boundaries in America. You're allowed to kill any sacred cows. You have that right because it's your, First Amendment right bullshit. So we have no respect for anything here in the United States. So American tourists go to Japan and they'll go to some temple and they'll destroy property or whatever. And they just do things that piss people off. And I don't blame the Japanese for getting pissed off at the Americans because Americans, a lot of times, especially American tourists, are loud and obnoxious and destructive and annoying and arrogant and reckless. And so Japanese people, a lot of them hate tourists. American tourists, Western tourists, they hate them. Oh man, they hate them. And so if you want to visit Japan, I think now is probably going to be your last opportunity because it looks like soon enough, at least in the near future, Japan is just going to declare war on tourists. And it really bespeaks and it really indicates this growing hatred towards foreigners. And it really bespeaks this growing nationalism intensifying in Japanese society. So this rising tide of nationalism it's not coming out of a vacuum. So it says here that in May, ahead of the upper house election, Sanseiyato released its own draft constitution and called for creating a new constitution. The proposal echoes the historical slogan to revere the emperor, expel the barbarians, so no joy. It is a late Edo period phrase stressing loyalty to the emperor and resisting foreign influence. So these people want to go back. They want to go back to the Meiji era ideology, which eventually led to the Imperial Japanese reign of terror that was unleashed onto much of Asia during World War II in the 1930s. The rape of Nanking and all that stuff. What happened in Manchuria, what happened in the Philippines. Comfort women, sex slavery, all that evil shit that the Japanese did. They want to go back to all that stuff, okay? So it says here, the emphasis is clear in Chapter 1, Article 1 of this constitution that they want to establish. Japan is a nation ruled by the emperor and united as one with its people. So they want to bring back the good old emperor worship. This phrase portrays the emperor as a ruling figure, not just a symbol. It's sharply... by the way, according to Japanese national religion, Japanese imperial religion, there is a goddess by the name of... what was her name? Ahate Arsu or whatever. What was it called? Mahate Ersu or something like that. She's the goddess. And according to Japanese imperial religion... the emperor actually comes from the vagina of the sun goddess. So they want to bring back all that stuff. Like the emperor comes from the sun goddess. You have to believe in all that. You have to worship him. He's God. Japan's Tokugawa isolationism as a result of Christianization Japan via Nagasaki. Yes. They. I'm not saying they want to go back to total isolationism, but they want to go back to the Meiji era. You see what I'm saying? The Meiji era was after that was when Japan awakened out of isolationism. But they definitely want to have Japan become more independent from the American empire, and they also want to create a more independent military force. They also want Japan to have nuclear weapons. And by the way, it's not really far-fetched because Japan is already it's already a de facto nuclear power. Japan has the technological capacity to make nuclear weapons in a matter of months anyway. So, I mean, it's also possible, and I've heard this before, it's also possible that Japan already has nuclear weapons. Spaniards are declaring war on tourists, and they are the most laid back. Dude, if Spaniards hate you, you've really messed up because Spaniards are super laid back. I was in Spain back in 2015, and Spain's a beautiful, beautiful country. So anyway, it says here... this phrase portrays the emperor as ruling figure, not just a symbol. It sharply contrasts with Japan's current constitution, Chapter 1, Article 1, which defines the emperor as the symbol of the state and of the unity of the people, deriving his position from the will of the people with whom resides sovereign power. So this is what the current constitution says, but they want to change that to Japan as a nation ruled by the emperor. Yes. Article 1 of the proposed constitution also reinforces the emperor's sacred nature. So you got to worship the pharaoh. It describes him as a sacred figure who prays for the happiness of the people and must not be violated. Yes. This wording evokes the image of a living deity reminiscent of pre-war ideology rejected after World War II. It aligns more closely with the spirit of the Meiji Constitution than with Japan's current legal framework. Yes, that's correct. Article 3 expands the emperor's role further. It designates the emperor as head of state and gives him authority to approve key national matters under cabinet responsibility. Sanseieto's proposed new Japanese constitution includes provisions that strongly reflect the slogan, "Expel the barbarians." That's all the tourists. They want to get rid of them. Oh, not just the tourists. They also really hate all the Chinese and Koreans and the Filipinos who live in Japan. Also, they hate those people. They want to get rid of them. There's a lot of Korean people who've been living in Japan for a long time. A lot of Korean people who were born in Japan, who have been raised in Japan. They go to Japanese schools, and they want to get rid of Koreans, and they want to get rid of Chinese people. This phrase called for resisting and removing foreign influence, and the draft reveals clear anti-foreigner sentiment. Now remember, literally millions of Japanese people voted for this party. Now, does this mean that because Sansei-eto has 15 seats in the Japanese parliament, that it's eventually going to dominate the Japanese government? No, it doesn't mean that. There are two things that could happen with this. Well, three things. Let's just say three things. One, just given the nationalist trend that we have been seeing in the world. One, the Sansei-eto party could actually take over the Japanese government and within a 10-year time frame, something like that. That's possible. Two, another party could come up and replace the Sansei-eto and then dominate. That's another possibility. And three, the dominating power in Japan right now, the LDP, or the Liberal Democratic Party, which was Shinzo Abe's party, realizing that the popularity of Sansei-eto reflects a growing tide in right-wing nationalism, could then just become more right-wing and could express more right-wing ideology in a more intense manner, to retake the voters that it lost to Sensei Eto. That is a very likely scenario. Either way, the trend is there. The waves of nationalism are there. And it ain't going anywhere. Because you have China that's rising up. You have North Korea. And Japanese people are worried about going to war with China. So they want tough politicians. They want people who are hardliners. It doesn't matter. What the bottom line is that the nationalist and militarist wave in Japan ain't going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to be stopped. Either Sensei Eto is going to take over the government, or some other fanatical group is going to take over the government, or the LDP, Liberal Democratic Party, is just going to become more right-wing, and then it's going to win those voters. The trend is there. Now, Shinzo, here's the thing that I want to add. Sensei Eto, the opinions that Sensei Eto is expressing are not too far off from what Shinzo Abe was expressing. Shinzo Abe was a militarist. Shinzo Abe loved the emperor. Shinzo Abe was a denier of the atrocities that Japan committed during World War II. Shinzo Abe was an ultranationalist. Shinzo Abe wanted more independence for the Japanese military. Shinzo Abe was he was very enthusiastic about the idea of making Japan more militarily sovereign. Shinzo Abe's grandfather was a hardliner by the name of Nabusuke Kishi. Nabusuke Kishi was a prime minister of Japan not too long after World War II, and his dream was to reform the constitution that was imposed on Japan by the United States after World War II so that the Japanese could be able to have a more independent military force. Nabusuke Kishi commenced that trend, and then Shinzo Abe simply continued it on. Shinzo Abe's dream was to fulfill the dream of his grandfather. The difference between Shinzo Abe and Sensei Eto is that Shinzo Abe was very close to the Americans, and Shinzo Abe would express hardline opinions, but not to the point where he would appear openly antagonistic towards the Americans. So he pushed for his agenda of military autonomy for the Japanese. He pushed for his agenda of militarism in Japan, while staying close to the Americans and remaining a very close ally to the Americans. He was very close to Donald Trump. Donald Trump loved him. They used to play golf, ate sushi. Shinzo Abe got shot. And then Shinzo Abe got replaced. The guy who replaced Shinzo Abe was so unpopular that he didn't really last long at all. That guy got replaced by Shigeru. And Shigeru is extremely unpopular. Even though he's LDP, even though he's of the same party as Shinzo Abe, Shigeru Ishiba is very unpopular. And he's on his way out. That guy's on his way out. So they're going to have to find a guy to rule the LDP party who's going to be like Shinzo. They need to find another Shinzo Abe to rule the LDP party. That's the bottom line. They have to find someone who is hardline enough to appeal to the voters who want hardline nationalism, and those people are legion. They're very numerous, while at the same time maintaining the power of the LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party. So the LDP is going to get a new leader. Shigeru is on his way out. It's very obvious. He's talking about staying in power. He's on his way out. He's going to be replaced by someone, and the LDP party is going to have to find someone who's like Shinzo. Shinzo was extremely popular in Japan. Very popular in Japan. Believe it or not, I believe when Shinzo ran the first time for politics, he lost. Then he visited a very ancient temple in the mountain. It's a Buddhist temple, and he had enlightenment. You can read about this yourself. It's I read about this years ago. He had a enlightenment, and then he ran for office again, and then eventually he became prime minister. So he believes that Buddha helped him out, or that this temple helped him out. It's all very demonic. It's all very satanic, and there is a satanic conspiracy in all this. It's not all just man's hand here. There is a satanic conspiracy here in which you have abysmal and diabolical forces that want to see the sinister ideology of Japan come back from the dead, because at the end of the day, the devil wants humans to kill each other. The devil wants humanity to kill itself. That's what it wants more than anything. It hates human beings because human beings are the only creature that was made in the image of God. And the second person of the Godhead, God the Son, is fully man, fully God. And so that humanity, that fullness of humanity that lies within the Godhead, is to the animosity of all satanic forces. And the devil wants to destroy all of humanity because of his hatred for Christ. And so the devil wants us to kill each other. If that means reviving Japanese militarism, so be it. If that means getting Jews to hate on Arabs and Arabs to hate on Jews and have them kill each other, so be it. If that means using the greed of the military-industrial complex and getting Lockheed Martin to wine and dine politicians to get them to agree to NATO expansionism in order to enable European countries to buy American military technology and thereby provoking the Russians to invade Ukraine and getting people to kill each other even more, so fucking be it. At the end of the day, it's a war between us and the devil. And it's a war between us and the anti-human forces that are his acolytes on earth. We wrestle not with flesh and blood, but with principalities and rulers of darkness at the end of the day. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. And so the popularity of people in the Sansieito party in Japan is a reflection of this reality. The hatred to tourists, because tourists don't know how to behave, especially American tourists. Believe me, I used to live in Mexico. I know how nasty American tourists can be. Americans enter a country, and the first thing they ask is, where's the strip club? Where's the strip club? I want to see some booty. I want to see some ass and titties. I want to say, oh, where's the strip club? Where's the alcohol and the strip club? Where's the hookers? And Americans will ruin a society. I'm sorry to say this, but American tourists can be an absolute cancer to any country. I'm not saying all Americans are this way, certainly not. But a lot of Americans can just be pure cancer to a country, and they can destroy a society just because of the things that they demand. So American tourists, toxic, evil, nasty. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Enough of them. Enough to piss off the Japanese. And the thing about Japan is that there's two worlds in Japan. I've never been to Japan, but this is just my impression of Japan. And this is actually what I've heard from people who have lived in Japan and people who were born and raised in Japan. Japan has essentially two worlds. You have one world, which is the face, right? This is the face of Japan. And then you have the second world, which is real Japan. The face of Japan is the nice Japan. It's the Japan that we as Westerners romanticize. It's the Japan that we glorify. It's the Japan that gives us warm feelings inside. It's the Japan that makes us think, oh, if I only could live in this country and I would just watch anime and watch Japanese romantic comedies and listen to J-pop and eat ramen every night at those retro Japanese food stands and it would just be the greatest life ever. And you know what? Looking at a lot of videos from Japan, Japan looks absolutely dope. Japan looks awesome. It does. It's a beautiful country. Its aesthetics are almost unrivaled. There are very few other countries that can rival the aesthetics of Japan. The preservation of ancient Chinese culture that Japan has been able to do and maintain for so many centuries is quite astounding. I believe that Japan absorbed much of the culture of the Tang Dynasty. Correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I think it was the Tang Dynasty of China which influenced Japanese culture the most. And the Chinese culture that Japan absorbed got locked into Japan. And if you look at Japanese classical music, a lot of Japanese classical artwork. It really is just a continuation of an older form of Chinese culture that the Japanese had absorbed. It's still beautiful nonetheless, and I love listening to Japanese music, and Japanese martial arts have, always fascinated me. Japanese Shotokan karate is very interesting. But there's a darker side to Japan, and this is the side of Japan that you will see if you live in Japan long enough and if you get intimate enough with the Japanese society. And this is the racist underbelly of Japan. This is the Yakuza. This is all of the very bizarre fetishes that certain people have made businesses out of in Japan. This is the very demonic and satanic forms of anime that are pushed for. For example, in Japan, they actually have, I hate to say this, but this is just the reality. They actually have animated child pornography in Japan, and it is accepted in Japanese society. According to Rabbi Dennis Prager, it's totally kosher. But according to the rest of us who have humanity, it's absolutely demonic. But this is the dark side of Japan. And also a part of the dark side of Japan is this embracing of Japanese imperial culture, right? This embracing of the evils of Japan's past, the denial of Japan's atrocities, and the embracing of the ideology that led to those atrocities. So you have a lot of right-wing ideology in Japan, a lot of hard right, far right, ultra-nationalism in Japan that is very popular. For example, this is one of the biggest examples of what I'm talking about. You have the Yasukuni Shrine in Japan. The Yasukuni Shrine is where war criminals are enshrined as divine beings. Yeah. So just imagine a church in Germany that says the soul of Hitler lives here and it is divine. And German politicians go and visit this church and they burn incense to the soul of Hitler. I mean, that would be pretty insane, right? This happens in Japan all the time. You have Japanese politicians who go to the Yasukuni Shrine, and they do so to pay homage to the spirits of Class A war criminals. And they also do this to troll the Chinese and the Koreans. Now, there are a few things that unite the Chinese and the Koreans, one of which is dumplings. But the other thing that unites the Koreans and the Chinese is their disdain for Japanese nationalism. And every time Japanese politicians go and visit the Yasukuni Shrine to burn a candle for some rapist and mass murderer, the Chinese and the Koreans rightfully get upset. Why? Because the Japanese are deifying and making a cult, and they are worshiping people who murdered Koreans and Chinese by the millions. That's why. Murdered and raped Chinese people and Korean people by the millions. And it is basically a way to tell the Koreans and the Chinese, not only do we deny that those atrocities happened, but we will actually worship those who did those atrocities. And if you want to get an idea of the dark side of Japan, here's a little sociological experiment that you can do. I've done this numerous times. Go to Google Translate and find out what the word for Chinese is in Japanese, right? Find out how to spell Chinese or Chinese people in the Japanese script, in the Japanese hieroglyphs. Then take that word and go onto X/Twitter and put that word in the search engine. You will have access to Japanese Twitter. You will have access into a world that you have never seen before. And then proceed to use Google Translate to translate what these people are saying. These are Japanese people. And I've done this a number of times. And the amount of racism that I read from these Japanese Twitter posters really gives us an insight into this world that I'm talking about here. There is a lot of hatred to Chinese people in Japan. They describe Chinese kids as loud and as dirty. They describe Chinese people as very disrespectful. They describe Chinese people as just basically subhuman. They just don't like them. And a lot of Japanese people feel this way. Now, I remember years ago, because I've been talking about this since early 2014, You can go onto my website, shootbot.com, and you can just look up Japan and go look at the hundreds of articles that I've written on this topic. I was writing a lot of articles on this topic back in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18. Still writing on it. And one day I get a message from a Japanese guy. Now, Japanese people, when it comes to speaking to Americans or to really anyone outside of Japan about politics, especially about nationalistic politics and right-wing politics, Japanese people don't really talk about this subject. They don't talk about right-wing politics with non-Japanese people, especially English speakers. With English speakers, they want to maintain the whole sushi persona, harimasu, konnichiwa, karate, Pokemon, konnichiwa, right? They want to maintain that image because that's what the Americans want to see. So they played that song and dance with the Americans, but they won't talk politics with Americans. Usually they won't, right? It's rare to find Japanese people willing to talk to you at all about these topics. And I've been doing videos and writing on Japan for over 10 years. And do you know how many times Japanese people approached me online to talk to me about my writings and my videos? One Japanese person has. One, because they don't talk about these issues, because they just want to maintain the image of ramen, Pokemon, konnichiwa. That's what they want, all right? So one day this Japanese guy writes me, and he says to me, I want to talk to you because I think you're wrong about what you say about Japan. You're wrong, he says. You're wrong. I said, okay, I'm wrong. So I agree to talk to him. We have a little Skype conversation set up, and he begs me not to record the discussion and to be true to my word, because he said, I beg you not to record this. I just want to have a private conversation with you. He was so adamant about it. And I gave him my word that I wouldn't record it. And I should have recorded. I kind of regret not recording it. I should have recorded it, but because I like to be true to my word, I didn't record it. But I remember the conversation. And he was a young Japanese guy. He had to have been in his maybe, how old was I at the time? Let's see, I was 24, 25 years old. He had to have been either in his late 30s or early 40s. And he had long hair. He had that stereotypical Japanese look. Long hair. It looks like he could make a good ramen, or at least recommend to you a really good ramen place. And he was very calm, cool, and collected. He wasn't yelling at me or anything like that. And the first thing he tells me in the beginning of our conversation, he says, "Are you recording this?" I said, "No." He goes, Please, I beg you, please do not record this." I said, "Listen, why are you so adamant about me not recording this conversation?" He said, "Because landlord might see the conversation." Landlord see conversation? I could be kicked out of apartment. Now, I know that's a Chinese accent. I'm trying to do the Japanese accent. I could be kicked out. Landlord could evict me. I said, oh, damn, shit. So it really showed me how Japanese society is, right? Like, it's all about peer pressure and keeping your mouth shut and not talking about certain things and all that stuff. It's not like America. And he starts telling me about Chinese people. That's one of the first things, after we got the whole landlord thing out of the way, he starts telling me about Chinese people. And he says, Chinese people in Japan, they are very dirty people. And their kids are very dirty and just loud, obnoxious children. Japanese kids, very calm, very clean, very respectful. Chinese and Korean, he mentioned Koreans. Chinese and Korean kids, loud, dirty, and Chinese people, they go to restaurants and they just leave their plates on the table. They are very dirty people, and so I began to get a feeling of, right, the vibes. I began to get the vibe of Japan. This is what the vibe is, right, when it comes to racial differences and things of that sort. Believe it or not, this is kind of a side story, but it does connect with the overall theme of this video. Believe it or not, I remember, I kid you not, you can't make this up. I actually saw this with my own eyes in Texas, in the state of Texas. I went to a McDonald's, and it was a fairly empty McDonald's. There weren't a whole lot of people there. And I was sitting in the middle of the restaurant, sitting in the middle of the McDonald's, and it was fairly empty place. And to my left side was a Chinese family. And to my right side was a Japanese man and his son. Kid you not, I actually saw this with my own eyes. And the Chinese family was husband and wife, one child, or maybe two. And the little Chinese kid, I remember, was very bat, 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 like just loud. I mean, I saw this with my own eyes. Bat, bat. Now, not as loud as some of the American kids I've seen, but he made some noise. Bat. And you see the Chinese father, and he's got this, this t-shirt and jeans. He looks very regular, and he just looks like he's not dressed up fancy at all. And he's just sitting there. He's just like, and the wife is, that sounds like Korean. What's Chinese? What's Chinese? How Chinese sounds like, making Chinese noises. And the kid, they get their food, the tray, bat. I kid you not, I saw this with my own eyes. And then I see the Japanese dude. The Japanese dude is 100% not from the US. This dude was not from here. 100%. This dude was an immigrant from Japan, or maybe he was in Texas for business. Who knows? But 100%, this dude wasn't from America. And he had that almost Mongolian look. Reddish, pinkish skin. I mean, the real classic Japanese look. This dude was thin. You could tell he worked out. And he had a suit on. He looked super proper. And the little Japanese son was with him. And this kid was dressed up clean, proper. And oh my gosh, dude. Not one noise from the Japanese kid. Nothing. Nothing. Not one peep out of this kid. Little Japanese kid is sitting there with his little hamburger, eating properly, not making any noise, not making a mess. I mean, eating super proper, not talking with his mouth, not talking with food in his mouth, none of that stuff. And the Japanese father is very proper, back straight, eating his Big Mac with total respect and legitimacy, just eating with pure Japanese aesthetics. And I couldn't stop looking. I kept looking at the Japanese. I kept looking at the China. I'm like, holy dude, two ethnic enemies in the same McDonald's. You can't make this up. This 100% happened. Two ethnic enemies in the same McDonald's. And the Japanese guy says a few words to his kid, and the little kid, not one word from this little kid. They clean their mess. They put the stuff in the trash can. They make sure the table's clean. They get up properly. They walk out. And as I was watching this, the memory of this conversation that I had with this Japanese nationalist was replaying in my head. And I said, oh my God, that guy was telling me all about this is what they're complaining about. This is it. They're complaining about the little Chinese kids going, bah, 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 bah. This was it. Right? Like, I was seeing it in real time. So anyway, going back to this conversation that I had with this Japanese dude, he says to me, we need we need a more hardline policy against Chinese people in Japan. They are ruining Japan, ruining Japan. So I said, what do you think about Shinzo Abe? I'm sure you're a really big fan of his. I kid you not. This dude tells me this. He says, Shinzo Abe is not hot enough. He's not nationalist enough. Not hardcore enough. We need somebody stronger. We need somebody stronger than Shinzo. Shinzo is too weak. Too weak. And this dude was dead serious. I said, shit, they want somebody crazier than Shinzo. So then years later, Shinzo gets shot. Trump's boy gets shot right there. Bap, 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 bap. Total gangbang killing. Right there in the open. This guy had not enough bodyguards. We don't know what happened with the security. I don't know what happened exactly with the security. But supposedly this was a begrudged, angry Japanese man who was mad about the fact that his mom donated a whole bunch of money to some cult that Shinzo Abe had ties with. Some crazy evangelical cult, I guess, had some ties with Shinzo Abe, and this young Japanese dude was pissed off about the fact that his mom had donated a whole bunch of money to this cult. So he's like, I'm going to kill Shinzo Abe over this shit. Now, I need to look more into it, because I'm pretty certain there's a whole conspiracy theory about who really killed Shinzo Abe. But looking at the situation in Japan, how Shinzo Abe wasn't hardcore enough to satisfy the hardliners, and how Shinzo Abe was really balancing a very thin line between being a close ally to the US and supporting and advancing nationalistic and militaristic policies in Japan. He was good at maintaining a balanced line between the two, right? Not pissing off the Americans, not going against the American empire, while at the same time pursuing more and more Japanese militarist autonomy. And Shinzo was playing a very diplomatic and smart game for his agenda. So perhaps the killing of Shinzo was a conspiracy by which to say, okay, he's dead, let's get someone who's more hardcore. And people in the LDP party, the Liberal Democratic Party, they replaced Shinzo after he died with politicians who were not as politically, they didn't have the political proudness of Shinzo, right? So Shinzo gets replaced with politicians who didn't have the political prowess that he had. Shigeru Ishiba doesn't have the political prowess that Shinzo Abe had. So perhaps the killing of Shinzo is a conspiracy, or was a conspiracy, to further unleash those hardline extremist forces in the society, because they knew perhaps someone, we don't know who this, every conspiracy theory has a they. We don't know who the fuck this they is, but we all know they exist. Maybe they knew, hey, if you kill Shinzo, it's gonna lead a whole door to more extremist forces rising up in popularity. Perhaps that's what happened with Shinzo. I don't know, but it just seems to me that there's something darker that is occurring behind the curtains. And I'll read some of your guys' comments here. Hold up. Hold on. Maybe Korean reunification will happen due to their mutual hatred. I've actually thought of this before. And I remember years and years ago, many years ago, I went to the sushi stand. And it was one of those sushi stands that you see in a grocery store. Okay, it wasn't really like a legitimate sushi place, but it was in a grocery store. It was a sushi place. And there was a dude who I'm sure every American in that store thought was Japanese, but I started talking to him. Turns out the dude was from South Korea. And I said, where are you from? He said, I'm from Korea, South Korea. And I said, what do you think about Shinzo Abe? And I remember he had this little mask to cover his mouth, to prevent spit and facial hair, if he had any facial hair, from touching the sushi. So all you could see are these little Asian eyes. And he's like, little Asian eyes just got squintier. And he goes, Shinzo, no good. And I said, why is Shinzo Abe no good? He says, Shinzo tried to change the history of terrible crimes done by Japan to my people. And he was just very serious, this guy. And he really appreciated the fact that some American dude understood the plight of the Koreans and understood the source of these tensions between South Korea and Japan. But if there is another country that both North and South Koreans equally hate, it's Japan. If there is a country that the North and South Koreans could unite in hatred against, it's Japan. So I could see that happening. I could see that happening. I don't know. It's not, maybe I'm just a little bit too optimistic, but I could see it happening. Love the dramatic voices. Appreciate that, Gypsy Bird. Shameful display. Yep. Theo, please make thumbnails for the excerpts from the live streams different from your regular videos so that we can differentiate. Dude, relax. When I make excerpts from these live streams, they not only attract people who already watch my videos. See, please understand, I know you're coming from the right place. I'm not trying to be an asshole. I know you're coming from a good place. I totally get it. But just understand that these videos are, the excerpts from these streams are made to be actual videos for the channel. And they actually bring in people who have never seen my channel before. So if they see the thumbnail and they see that little red dot, they're not going to know what that's about. Only you are going to know what that's about. I want people to click on the excerpts. People who have never seen my channel before, I want them to click on the excerpts as a video from this channel, because they are videos for this channel. When I do these live streams, they're not just live streams. These are, the way I look at these live streams is not, the way I look at these live streams is that they're not just live streams, but they're also at the same time me recording entire loads of material for future videos. And I want these videos to be seen by an audience as a video for this channel, not as a distinct type of video, but just as a video of this channel. I understand you're coming from a good place, but understand this is where I'm coming from. All right, konnichiwa, and however you say thank you in Japanese, I say it to you. How do you say thank you in Japanese? Hold up, we gotta learn the language of the conquered nation of the American Empire. Thank you in Japanese. How do you say thank you in this language? Arigato.
Arigato.
Arigato. What an elegant language. I once heard a Japanese comedian say that the Chinese language sounds like a cork being forced into someone's asshole. Korean sounds like someone trying to pull the cork out of someone's asshole. And Japanese sounds like the sound of relief after the cork has been pulled out of the person's asshole. When I first heard that joke, I laughed my ass off. I thought it was so funny and clever. Japs are very competitive in their racism. They are. I wouldn't judge the Japanese by their Twitter. They can do that with our English Twitter. Okay, I have an answer for this, but I'm going to read the rest. And come to conclude, we're also immigrant-hating racists. Twitter is a cesspool. My friend, please understand. It's not an illusion. The hatred and the racism that you see in the English-speaking Twitter is all real. Written by real people. People who have regular jobs. People who are students. And scarier than that, people who are in the military. And they hold these views. And when they're talking in public, maybe they're the nicest people in the world. Maybe they'll shake your hand and buy you dinner and never express to you what they really believe. But when they get behind that screen, and when they are protected by the privacy of their own home, they reveal who they truly are while they are online. You see, I am a firm believer that the internet is a lot realer than we would like to think. For us, it's just the internet. It's just the internet, right? It's just the internet. It's just the internet. It's not just the internet. The internet is like the Matrix. It's a giant simulation. But it's a simulation where we can communicate with other people, just like we're doing right now. It's a simulation where we can express our ideas and our opinions. It's a simulation where we can debate our various differing views. But it's also a place where we can express what we really feel. And when you get on that Twitter page, let me tell you something. You are in hell. When I get on Twitter, and when I get on these various Twitter spaces, be it the American Twitter, the English Twitter, the UK Twitter, whatever, the Japanese Twitter, it is like I am in the midst of a bunch of rambling demons. And they are expressing nothing but vile and sinister and satanic hatred. When you see the racism in the English-speaking Twitter, please understand that it's based on reality and it's a reflection of reality. The hatred that you see Americans expressing on X are the opinions of real Americans, and they do reflect a growing tide of right-wing extremism in American society. So just as the English-speaking Twitter reflects the English-speaking world, the Japanese-speaking Twitter also reflects Japan. And what is expressed online will always be reflected in the political world, because the political world is downstream from the metapolitical world. The metapolitical world is what we're doing right now, right? We're online, we're talking, we're vibing, we got vibes, we got aura, we got whatever. We got certain aesthetics for our views. And if the metapolitical world absorbs an opinion long enough, right? If a particular opinion becomes popular enough in the metapolitical world, it will always be reflected. It will always manifest itself in the political realm. And that's my position. If I ever go on a racism competition, Grok said my racism is professional, I would be very concerned about competing against a Japanese. Wow. Samurai Discipline, yeah. Or Disciple, yeah. LOL, yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. I'm glad you thought that was funny as well. LOL, that accent mixed between Scottish and Chinese. There you go. Ted, do you know what's the Japanese nationalist outlook on us humbled Ruskies? I have no idea. I don't know either. I know that there's a very long history of war between the Japanese and the Russians. You know this better than I do, given the fact that your grandfather, as you told me, was a veteran of the Russo-Japanese War. And Japan defeated Russia. That's correct. Yep. 1904 to 1905, Russo-Japanese War. Horrific conflict. Arigato, Ted-sama. Thank you very much, Mr. Kowalski. I'm guessing you're Polish with that username. I know Jacob, my grandfather survived it and lived to get to St. George's Crosses. Guess he killed a lot of them. Well, a lot of Japanese people died. A lot of Russians died in that war as well. 90,000 Russians died in one battle in the Russo-Japanese War. It was really horrific stuff, guys. Really horrific. But let's go back. Let's go back to this article. I know we kind of went off on a tirade there, but you know what? That's always the best part of these streams, right? It's the tirades, because they're the most human part of these streams. You know, where I just have a fluid stream of consciousness. But let's go back to Japan. I'm starting to sound like a Japanese person. Oh, by the way, if any of you guys are really into Japanese movies, there are some really good Asian films that I'd recommend to you guys. In fact, I actually formed a list of the best Asian films. I don't know if I still have it on my computer. I'll have to find it, but there are some really good Asian films out there. And there is a Japanese movie. It is called Unforgiven, starring Ken Watanabe. Guys, if you have not seen Unforgiven, there's an American film called Unforgiven. There's a Japanese movie called Unforgiven, starring Ken Watanabe. Guys, if you have not seen this movie, it is a masterpiece to behold. It is one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. It's in my top 10 list of best films I've ever seen. Unforgiven with Ken Watanabe. Truly a cinematographic exemplification of Japanese mastery in the arts. I mean, that movie, when I watched it back in 2014, I couldn't stop watching it. I just couldn't stop watching it. The soundtrack, the visuals, the aesthetics, the vibe, the music, the emotions expressed in that movie were so absolutely masterful and perfect. It was something to behold. It's an experience, I'm telling you. I'm telling you right now, Unforgiven starring Ken Watanabe. It is an experience that I think a lot of you guys will not forget. Truly a masterpiece of a movie. It's just a beautiful film. Truly a beautiful movie. It's I remember just watching that film and just my eyes were just widened by the mastery of how the director did it. Sensei Eto's proposed new Japanese constitution includes provisions that strongly reflect the slogan, "Expel the barbarians." All right, we already read this. In Chapter 3, Article 14, it states, "The state shall take necessary measures to ensure that local governments are not subject to interference from foreign countries or international organizations." That means more independence for Japan, because Japan is an occupied country. Let's be real here. This frames foreign entities as threats to domestic autonomy and urges blocking any external involvement. The sentiment intensifies in Chapter 4, particularly in Article 19. It begins with, "The state shall have the sovereign right to freely determine the conditions for the entry and residence of foreign nationals." This signals a move towards stricter immigration control. Again, this is all about the hatred towards Chinese people, Koreans, Filipinos, other foreigners who are living in Japan. Also, the hatred towards tourists. The clause, "Land is public property and shall not be transferred to foreign nationals or foreign capital," takes a hardline protectionist stance. It treats foreign ownership as a national risk. Another provision allows the state to confiscate such property to repurchase it with such compensation. So, with just compensation. So, they're saying that they want to, if foreigners own property in Japan, they want the state to have the power to just take it away from them with just compensation. But still, they want to take it away from foreign ownership. A power that raises concerns over property rights and investor protections. Article 19 further excludes foreigners from political life. It states, "Foreign nationals shall not be granted suffrage or eligibility to run for public office, and naturalized citizens shall not be permitted to hold public office until 3 generations have passed." The exclusionary stance is also enforced in Article 5. It states, "The requirements for being national should be defined by law, based on whether the father or mother is Japanese, whether Japanese is the person's native language, and whether they have a heart that values Japan." So they're really going off on the racism stuff, really becoming racially fixated. Chapter 4 of Sensei Eto's proposed constitution outlines the creation of a self-defense military. This is where we get into militarism, echoing elements of pre-war ideology. Article 20 of Chapter 4 states, "The state shall maintain a military for the purpose of self-defense, hereinafter referred to as the self-defense military." This signals a move away from Article 9 of the current Constitution, the famous renunciation of war clause. The use of the term military and the clause, "A military court shall be established and its structure shall be defined by law," indicate a return to pre-war systems. These include military tribunals abolished after World War II. The clause, "The Prime Minister shall hold supreme command over the self-defense military," shows strong centralization of authority. So what does this mean, guys? It means that they want the Prime Minister to have the power to declare war. And that means war with China, right? Or North Korea, or both. The clause, okay, I've already read this. Article 20 also states, "The exercise and termination of the right to self-defense shall require approval from the National Diet. However, this is a big ass however, in cases of unavoidable emergency, such approval may be obtained retroactively." Yeah. So there you go. Sensei Eto's proposed constitution signals a dramatic ideological shift. It revives reverence for the emperor, rejects foreign influence, embraces anti-foreign sentiment, and calls for rearmament. While framed as a path toward national self-reliance, the draft appears to diverge from the democratic principles Japan has upheld since the end of World War II. And there you go. And I have more articles on this topic. We'll talk more about this. This is a pretty big deal. I think this is a pretty huge deal. Japan's LDP is teetering as far-right challenger emerges. There we go, LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party. Following dismal results in Japan's parliamentary elections, there is a broad consensus among Japanese lawmakers and political analysts that Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's days are numbered. That's what I said earlier. Shigeru Ishiba is on his way out. He is not hardline enough. He is not popular enough. He is nowhere near as popular as Shinzo Abe was. And that's it. We're going to get more and more hardline politics coming out of Japan. So Japan, Germany, and Turkey, all of which warred with Russia, are coming back. That is correct. Yes, that's right. You got it. Yep, the biggest enemies of Russia Historically speaking, Japan, Germany, and Turkey. These are the biggest enemies of Russia. You could say Turkey was the longest enemy, the enemy that lasted the longest in having wars with Russia. But as far as the most existential enemy in Russia's history, that position would be given to Germany, I think. And then you have Japan, which had a pretty bloody war in 1904 and 1905 with Russia, called the Russo-Japanese War, which was pretty horrendous. So there's that. Right, there's that. A guarantee if Japan won World War II, the only anime that would be available is about the war. 100%. 100%, yeah. 100%. So it says here, the current political crisis is the result of a July 20 election in Japan's upper house, the less powerful chamber in parliament. It has no direct role in determining the prime minister, but is an indicator of political fortunes in a country where the foundation of individual leaders is generally unstable, even as the ruling party remains solid. Ishiba's Liberal Democratic Party, which has been in power for 64 of the past 70 years, so this is the longest lasting party to hold power in post-World War II Japan. So the LDP, which has been in power for 64 of the past 70 years since its founding in 1955, lost its majority, even with the added support of its religious-backed coalition partner, the Komeito. And Komeito party, by the way, is a Buddhist nationalist party, so it's also an evil party. The ruling coalition now has 122 of the 248 seats, so it's lost seats in the upper house, and with 220 of the 465 seats in the lower house, its grasp on power is tenuous. So it is losing its power, the LDP. Japan is joining the growing cadre of Western nations where young voters, especially men, anti-woke nationalistic men, rely on social media for their view of the world and don't like what they see. As elsewhere, this has created anger over easy targets, including higher prices and foreigners. So all the foreigners, the rise of China, the rise in rice prices, the inflation that's been taking place in Japan, all of the issues that have been taking place in Japan. The tourists, the loud and obnoxious and annoying and disrespectful tourists, all of these issues are causing a lot of resentment to be felt by a lot of young people, especially young men in Japan. And so this is being manifested. The anger is being manifested. And look at what the article says here. It says that these guys are online, which means they're in the meta-political space. They're in the meta zone. And remember what I said. What happens in the meta-political world will always manifest itself eventually in the political world. So these guys are online. They're hearing different opinions. They're hearing very extremist opinions, or very angry opinions. And so they vote for this party. So the metapolitical sphere translates into the political sphere. The telegenic Senseito party, which emerged from an angry YouTube channel and campaigned on the familiarity, nebulous concept of Japanese first, was the big winner in the recent election, taking 15 seats. Now, you say, well, that's just 15 seats. Yep, it is. But each seat represents over 1 million voters. So, Japan, the Senseito party in Japan got 1 seat in, I want to say, 2022. That 1 seat was worth, I want to say, about 1.7 million votes. 1.7 million votes just to get 1 seat. Right? It takes a lot of work to be popular enough in an election to get just enough people to give you 1 seat. Imagine being a dominating party. You're getting tens of millions of voters. So just to get 1 seat for the Japanese parliament requires over 1 million votes, 1.7 million votes, something like that. So now this party has 15 seats. So we're talking millions upon millions upon millions of people voting for this party. So 15 seats is no small issue. It's not a small matter. It's very serious. Very serious. And remember, the AfD at one point in time, the AfD in Germany got 15 seats or somewhere around there. Let's look at the AfD election history and how many seats they got in their elections. This is the rise of a party in Germany that is very similar to that of Sensei-Eto in Japan. So in 2013, they got 0 seats in the federal parliament of Germany. And then in 2017, they got, boom, 94 seats. And then in 2021, 83. 2025, 125. They keep growing. And at one point in time, they were a marginal party that had 0 seats. 0 seats. And now they're the second biggest party in Germany. And then if you look at the European parliamentarian elections for the AfD, in 2014, they got 7 seats in the European Parliament. 2019, they got 11. 2024, 15 seats. And then if you look at state parliaments, 2021, 17 seats. In the Baden-Württemberg Parliament, 2023, 32. In 2023, 17 seats in Berlin. Bremen, they got 0 seats. In Brandenburg, 30 seats. 14 seats here, 18 seats there, 9 seats there, 12 seats here, 3 seats there, 40 seats here, 23 seats there, 32 seats in Thuringia. So you can see how a party that was once in the margins becomes a pretty big deal. Pretty big deal. 15 seats is not a small matter. The next election could be 30 seats. The next election could be 40 seats. So always keep in mind when you see these sorts of extremist parties winning seats, always be mindful of what's happening and always pay attention because people tend to be surprised and shocked by the rise of fanatics when it's too late and those fanatics have full power. So it says here, so it started out as a YouTube channel, and then it literally started out in the metasphere. Literally started out in the metapolitical realm. Now it's in the political realm. So they got 15 seats, up from just 1 previously, and a respectable 15% of the vote for proportional candidates in the 2-stage election. This still leaves them as a minor party, for now at least. Much of the anger appears to be aimed at the mass influx of foreign tourists, who can be seen in large numbers at popular cities such as Tokyo and Kyoto. This, of course, has nothing to do with immigration, but provides a nice hook for Sensei-Eto to talk about the evils of foreigners who are supposedly buying Japanese land and committing crimes. Japan merely sought to liberate. So this is one of the things that they believe. They believe that Japan merely sought to liberate other Asian nations during World War II. So yeah, we raped them, we killed them by the millions, but we were just trying to help them out, right? It's a very Israeli-style move there. With wholesale prices and production fixed by the government, Japan had a growing rice stockpile that became increasingly expensive to manage. This reversed suddenly with hotter weather and the mass retirement of the post-war generation of farmers, leading to a fall in available land for rice production. In response, the government has started to release stockpiles and increased imports to help bring prices down, but progress has been slow. So the price of rice has gone up in Japan, and there was a problem with drought in Japan. So the harvest of rice, the yields of rice was low this year, to say the least. And then so the Japanese government said, okay, we have to release the rice that we have in our storage units to the markets because there's not enough rice, indigenously grown rice for the markets. So they released rice from their stockpiles, and the rice has been sitting in the stockpiles for years. It requires a lot of money to keep them cool and to keep them preserved. And so this rice is not exactly the best. It's not exactly the best quality rice. So a lot of people are, sort of pissed off about this, and the high price of rice gets the people pissed off. And so this sort of thing leads to political resentment, and fanatics can take advantage of this resentment. Japanese workers now seeing real wages falling for most of the past 2 years. So yes, this is also a source of a lot of the resentment that's been going on in Japan. In May, they fell 2.9% below levels from the same month last year. A rise in wages is also not uniform, while big companies have been able to use some of their higher profits amid a failing yen to push up salaries. The small and medium-sized enterprises that employ 70% of Japanese workers have found that they are being squeezed and are hard-pressed to raise wages. The focus has instead been on who could replace Ishiba. So this is a big focus for the LDP, or the Liberal Democratic Party. Who is going to replace Shigeru Ishiba, because he is extremely unpopular. And so the LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party, seeing people who voted for the LDP now voting for Sensei Eto, know that they have to utilize a strategy to win these voters back. How are they going to do that? They're going to have to become more hardline. They're going to have to become more aggressive in expressing extremist ideology to win those voters back. And the LDP is more than likely going to do this. So expect a hardline ideology to be coming out of the mouths of the LDP if they want to win back those voters. If they don't, they will continue to lose people, and Sensei Eto is going to grow, or some other party like it will grow.